Welcome to Unveil. Here, we look past the surface narratives to expose the hidden algorithms and structural architectures behind major historical events. In the winter of 1978, a quiet, snow-dusted village just outside Paris became the heavily guarded nerve center for a global revolution. Under state-level police protection provided directly by the French government, an exiled cleric named Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini ran the media and communication operations that would soon birth the Islamic Republic. The no-flow arrangement represents the deliberate application of a specific, repeatable statecraft method. To build an untethered proxy force, money and weapons are never enough. You must supply divine authority. We call this the Theological Slot. The playbook begins by scanning a community for a doctrinal vacancy, then inserting a human asset directly into that void. The psychological effect is absolute obedience. You can no longer negotiate with the followers, because to defy the newly installed leader is to attack the divine itself. It is a brilliantly efficient geopolitical weapon. The theology automatically engineers a fanatical, self-sustaining enforcement layer loyal to a state-controlled asset. To test this algorithm, we have to look 50 years before the Iranian Revolution, to the French Mandate in the Levant during the 1920s. France needed local leverage. They began by deliberately renaming the local Nusayri sect to Alawites, constructing a new political identity and carving out the state of Jabal Alawite. French military intelligence then scanned the sect's core creed and found their vacancy, the local eschatological expectation of an eighth divine manifestation after Ali. They found a local man named Suleiman el-Murshid and actively elevated him into that exact slot, maintaining direct operational ties as he rose to prominence. The Murshidiya sect formed around him almost immediately, and exactly as the playbook dictates, a fanatical loyalist assassin class, known as the Fidayeen, mobilized to protect their human god. France then built a military officer corps directly from this newly galvanized community. That corps became the nucleus of the Syrian army, laying the groundwork for the Assad dynasty. By engineering a bespoke religious proxy, French intelligence successfully installed an architecture of control that dictated the balance of power in the Middle East for a century. Which brings us back to that quiet French village in 1978. This time, the playbook was deployed on a nation-state scale, and it triggered a fierce internal war within the French government. The director of France's external intelligence agency vehemently fought the decision to host Khomeini, warning the cleric was a firebrand whose function is to set fire to everything. Domestic intelligence explicitly recommended expelling him to Algeria, but President Valéry Giscard d'Estaing personally overruled both of his own spy agencies. He issued a direct decree to grant Khomeini state protection, specifically to secure £1 billion in Airbus contracts, the Tehran Metro project, and a Peugeot factory. The theological target in this second deployment was a gap in Twelver Shia thought called Wilayat al-Faqih, the concept of a jurist acting as the living stand-in for the hidden imam. Khomeini stepped directly into that void. By filling that supreme doctrinal slot with French backing, Khomeini generated an enforcement layer massive enough to secure a nation. We know that layer today as the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and the Basij. For 7 billion francs in trade deals, the French presidency ignored its intelligence officers, applied its colonial blueprint, and provided the operational launchpad for the modern Islamic Republic and its global proxy network. The Murshidiya in the 1920s and Khomeinism in 1978 share the exact same structural DNA. We are looking at one operational playbook, reapplied across different eras. This timeline continued well past the Iranian Revolution. A third deployment of this architecture is currently active. Today, France manages a network of deep commercial complicity with Hezbollah. Over decades, Paris has layered on mutual culpability, from paying direct hostage ransoms in the 80s to suppressing Europol raids on Hezbollah's cocaine networks in 2016 to protect a €19 billion Airbus deal. Because both sides hold the records of these transactions, France is now functionally a hostage to the very proxies it helped build. If the Iranian regime falls or Hezbollah collapses, the receipts of this century-long complicity would finally come due. The diplomatic relationship between Paris and the Middle East often looks like standard statecraft. Beneath the surface, however, lies a lattice of massive commercial transactions that serves as the modern cover for a covert financial entanglement. Between 1995 and 2004, the French oil giant Total SA routed roughly $60 million in bribes to Iranian officials. The payouts were designed to secure oil rights in the Siri and South Pars fields. U.S. authorities eventually tracked the money. The Department of Justice secured a deferred prosecution agreement, while the SEC extracted over $245 million in penalties and disgorgement. By 2016, the scale of these transactions expanded. A €19 billion Airbus deal placed over 100 commercial planes into the Iranian market, adding a significant layer to this financial network. These commercial transactions form the visible outer shell of a state-sanctioned extortion architecture, binding French corporate interests to the Iranian regime. That same framework operates in the Mediterranean. Following the 2020 port explosion, the French shipping giant CMA-CGM secured a multi-billion-dollar contract to rebuild and operate the Beirut container terminal. The company is owned by Rodolphe Saadé, an executive who frequently travels as part of the French president's inner circle. To finalize the terminal agreement, Saadé negotiated directly with the Lebanese transport minister, a figure aligned with Hezbollah. Saadé even went as far as offering the minister the use of his private plane to secure the contract. Critical international infrastructure contracts are being awarded through direct Hezbollah facilitation, effectively converting commercial logistics into a system of proxy payouts. To understand why Paris permits this, we have to go back to the foundational transactions of the Lebanon hostage crisis. During the 1980s, the French state began paying Hezbollah for hostage releases, funneling the money through Iranian intermediaries. Crucially, records of these transactions were maintained by both sides. The man on the ground running these back-channel negotiations was a shadow operative named Jean-Charles Marchiani. He was recruited for this parallel intelligence network by Interior Minister Charles Pasqua, who operated with the full blessing of the French presidency. The legal fallout arrived decades later. Marchiani was convicted on related corruption charges in 2007, but he was quickly granted a controversial amnesty by President Nicolas Sarkozy. By sealing the Marchiani files under secret defense, France ensured that the records held by both sides became permanent points of leverage, turning a historical covert operation into an ongoing state liability. This liability dictates modern policy. In January 2016, a European sweep called Operation Cedar arrested 15 Hezbollah-linked individuals laundering €1 million a week through cocaine networks. Europol and the DEA scheduled a joint press conference to announce the bust, but France abruptly canceled it. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani was visiting Paris that exact same week to finalize the €19 billion Airbus deal. The French government made a documented operational decision to suppress the counterterrorism publicity to protect the contract. This diplomatic cover extends beyond single arrests. For years, 26 member states of the European Union have sought to fully designate Hezbollah as a terrorist organization. France alone maintains a veto to block the unanimous consensus. The French state actively suppresses its own domestic law enforcement and compromises European security to protect its commercial and covert co-conspirators. In August 2020, President Emmanuel Macron traveled to Beirut and held a private, undocumented meeting with the local leadership. His counterpart in that room was Mohammed Rad, the U.S.-sanctioned head of Hezbollah's parliamentary bloc. By 2026, this relationship began to obstruct Allied military action. France denied its airspace to Israeli cargo aircraft and U.S. bombers participating in strikes against Iran, forcing missions into massive Atlantic detours. These airspace denials function as an active obstruction of Allied operations, shielding the very entities that hold the records of French complicity. 50 years of shared secrets have created a state-scale version of the Epstein model. By participating in these transactions, the French state entered a cycle of mutual culpability. France and Hezbollah hold compromising receipts on their history. These identical weights of evidence lock both sides in a perfect equilibrium of shared liability. Any move to destroy Hezbollah automatically triggers the release of evidence detailing France's decades of covert financing and criminal complicity. France's Middle Eastern foreign policy is no longer driven by sovereign geopolitical strategy. It is dictated by the defensive constraints of a hostage state. The Marchiani files remain the primary evidentiary gap in this investigation, containing the specific financial and political trail that the French state continues protecting under secret defense. While benefiting from a proxy is common in geopolitics, 8 documented layers of financial payouts, operational collusion, and diplomatic shielding amount to a devastating historical record. It leaves one lingering question. What hidden leverage is so catastrophic that it forces a Western nuclear power to act as a protection racket for a designated terrorist organization? If you like our investigations and want to see more deep dives into global intelligence, please be sure to subscribe to the channel.